Welcome to another episode of the Washington Retirement Planning Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Meikle, and here we talk about all of your amazing Washington State retirement benefits and the best ways to utilize them. Today's episode, we're going over 5 key planning tips to get yourself prepared for 2026. After we go over those 5 tips, we're going to answer a question directly from the Washington State retirement planning community. And the question today is, how can I retire as early as possible on PERS 3 with over 30 years of service? So we'll address that towards the end of today's episode. If you're not a member of the community yet, it is free to join. I do have a free retirement course on there that's currently over 5 hours long. You can't find it anywhere else but inside this free community. The link will be in the description or the show notes below. So click on there and hop in. So the 5 tips we're going to talk about today to assist your planning in 2026 are all things I want to highlight from this previous year that have come up a lot of. So none of these are like urgent things, like big mistakes, but there are constant questions that keep coming up. And I think it'd be a good idea to address these this year and going forward. So the tip number 1 to assist your planning for this year is understanding that bigger monthly income is not always better. Yes, bigger numbers make it easier to pay for things. However, it can also be a downfall down the road. And really what I'm getting at here is when it comes to your survivorship options. So when you go into retirement, if you have a spouse, you're going to get 4 different ways to take your pension. They're going to give you option 1, which is the highest benefit possible. And you have 3 other options. They're all going to be a little bit smaller, and your spouse is going to get a percentage of that amount, whether that be 100% of that number, 50% of that number, or 66% of that number. So the mistake I've been seeing is a lot of people want the bigger number. They aren't really planning ahead for the what ifs in life or thinking about their spouse, and they want the bigger number. Bigger is better. So they will go with option 1 because they don't want to take any type of deduction or decrease from the state. And they're assuming that their spouse will be fine without them, not understanding how big of an impact that is to lose a guaranteed income stream. If you have enough saved in retirement, sure, it could work. But will it is a completely different question. There's always a chance that that money that you have today will not be there in retirement. Your spouse may not know how to distribute properly or anything like that. So it's important to, when you're going through your survivorship pension question, is to really consider what impact it has on your spouse. Case in point from this past year, I had a couple come in and the husband was a state employee, Plan 2 member who had an estimated pension of about $11,000 per month. His Social Security was another about $3,000 per month. He was adamant of waiting until age 70. So he alone was going to bring in $14,000 per month. His spouse, who was younger than him, had a very small pension, maybe a couple $100, and then her Social Security was maybe $1,400 a month. It was a fairly small amount per month. He was adamant that he was going to outlive her. He absolutely did not want to take any type of survivorship option at all. He wanted the bigger income. He was adamant that she didn't need the income. So looking at the situation, when you have someone like this, that if they were to pass away, now that surviving spouse is going to lose $11,000 per month guaranteed income, that's a big hit. The larger Social Security is going to stay, so she's going to get that $3,000 per month. She would lose her $1,400 per month and just get his. So this household is essentially going to go from making about $16,000 per month down to just about $3,000 per month if he were to pass away first. That is a huge swing in one direction. And while he was adamant that he was going to outlive her, even though he was older, just because he had good genes, that doesn't mean that's always going to be the case. We all know people who died unexpectedly, mystery medical things come up, accidents happen, and you could very well pass away tomorrow without even thinking twice about it. It's for those situations where you can't just go with the highest number. Highest number is not always better. Taking a small reduction now to ensure that your loved ones are going to have more income down the road is really where it counts. This person had money saved, and he was adamant that she would inherit this money and be okay. It was about, $1.5, maybe $2 million, something like that. So a good substantial amount of money probably would take care of her. But then it introduces the fact that this person who has absolutely no idea what stock market is, hasn't touched it, doesn't even know half this money exists probably. If they were to get that all at once and be in charge of managing it, they're probably not going to know what to do, how to do it. Might make mistakes trying to do it themselves. So again, more money is usually a good thing, but not always. So remember that you're not always just planning for yourself, also planning for the people who have to live on without you. Now, tip number 2 is don't assume that your spouse can figure it out. This feeds right into what I just said. If you have a large portfolio behind that you are personally managed because you want to trade yourself, and then you pass it on to a spouse, and that spouse has no idea what to do with it, that can create a lot of problems down the road. It has nothing to do with intelligence. They could be a very smart person, but having the willingness to do it or the ability to do it are 2 completely different things. Remember, as you get older, people get more conservative. Usually they start lagging on the technology side of things. So handing your surviving partner a $1 or $2 million portfolio in their 80s and expecting them to figure it all out probably isn't going to work well. Usually what this happens is they either will make some type of mistake, do nothing, or they will go ahead and hire an advisor. And if you want to have say on who that advisor is, it's best to start putting those pieces together now so you can have someone that you can trust that's going to help manage the finances after you're gone. As much as you love it, it's important to know that at some point you're not going to be able to do the things that you want to do, and your spouse is going to have to live on without you. So you want to have someone there to trust to take over the finance in that case. I also have those contingencies made up for my wife. She has nothing to do with the stock market, but should I pass away, she knows exactly who to call to take over the finances. Well, I already had that set up well ahead of time. So it's always a good idea to have contingencies. Even if you are a DIY planner that loves doing it yourself, you want to have some type of backup plan or someone you can trust to hand the keys to help run the ship when you're no longer available to do so, right? And it's not just investment portfolios. It's also taxes change. You're going to go from married, filing, jointly down to single. That's a tax jump a lot of times. And then you have required minimum distributions. Even if you pass away, your spouse still has to take RMD distributions from your IRA account as if you're still alive. So if you're 5 years older than her and she's 80, they're going to look up your RMD table as if you were 85, like if you're still living. And that's where they're going to make your spouse pull that money out from. And remember, it's a required minimum distribution. That money has to come out to avoid penalties, and the money does get taxed. And now that you went from married filing jointly to single filer, you're probably paying taxes at a potentially higher rate on that RMD. So there's a lot of things that get affected beyond just portfolio management. Also important to remember that the larger the portfolio is, the bigger mistakes will come. Most people don't think in percentages, we think in numbers. So if you hand an advisor, or if you're trying to manage yourself, let's say $10,000 in some investment account, let's say you made a bad trade, whatever it is, you lose $1,000. It's about 10%, it's $1,000. It sucks, but it's not the end of the world. It isn't that much money. Now, if you were to go ahead and do that with a $1 million portfolio and make the same mistake, 10% is now $100,000. It's a much, much bigger of a mistake. And these mistakes tend to happen when emotions are high. As you get older, things and more sensitive to these type of situations and topics, emotions will run much higher, and your tendency to make more mistakes goes up as you age. So the bottom line here is, if your spouse isn't managing money now, they're not magically going to want to do it later. Tip number 3, we're going over Roth conversions, and that is you really need a strategy. Roth conversions is not just picking a number to convert out of thin air and hoping it all works out. I see this all the time this past year and even years past, where people will come in to do their own Roth conversions because it's not that hard. They do themselves. Great. When it comes to figuring out how much to convert, there's never any data or solid plan behind it. It's usually just picking numbers. I did $10,000, and they do it every single year, $10,000. Part of it is how much taxes you can stomach, and a lot of it is just guessing and hoping it all works out. I've had some people do Roth conversions while still putting money pre-tax into DCP or 3P contracts. And in a way, you're kind of canceling yourself out, and it doesn't make much sense from a tax planning standpoint. You can do it, but you're doing a lot of extra work for nothing, really. So if you're going to go down doing Roth conversions, you should have some idea of what plan you're trying to do. Are we trying to maximize a bucket? Are we thinking about how our conversion is going to impact our Medicare or our Social Security? Because it does have an impact on both of those factors, or at least it can, depending on what level of income you're at, how much you're converting. Remember that Roth conversions, they affect your current taxes today. They also impact future RMDs, taxes that your survivors will have to pay, and things like that. So it impacts multiple areas. And you also need to report it correctly on your tax return. And a lot of people mess that up too, not knowing where it goes inside of their TurboTax software, may not even get credit for what they've done. So the bottom line for this tip is Roth conversions are more like a scalpel, not a hammer, and that converting with just a fixed number with no reasoning or rhyme behind it is really just guessing. If you're trying to do Roth conversions on your own, make sure you have some type of plan or strategy behind it to make sure this is actually going to work out in your best interest over the long term. Tip number 4 is understanding that long-term care insurance does not cover everything. We've had some people come to our office lately with policies in hand that they bought from somebody saying that they are covered for $300,000 long-term care. I bought a $300,000 policy, so I'm okay. I don't really need any more long-term care insurance. I already got that crossed off my list. But when we look at their policy documents, it might say $300,000 of coverage, but it also says that there's a monthly cap of $2,000 per month and there's no inflation protection. So what does that mean? It means $2,000 a month now, it's going to be the same $2,000 a month it's will pay out 10 to 20 years down the road. There's no inflation adjustment. It's $2,000 the whole way. If you're getting $2,000 per month, it's only $24,000 per year. It's going to take forever to get $300,000 out of the policy. You're going to need about 12 years in long-term care to even get close to using all of the policy benefits that you purchased. Long-term care is not a 12-year deal. Oftentimes people are in there 2 to 4 years. Sometimes it may go longer than that, but 12 years is on the extreme end of things. So this person might have had a $300 policy, but it's not paying much, $2,000 a month. If their long-term care bill is $8,000 for that month, great, $2,000 a month is covered from the insurance policy. The other $6,000, that's coming from your pocket. Whether that comes from your pension, Social Security, your retirement account, whatever it is, it's coming from your pocket. Even if you had $300,000 earmarked for this, they physically would not give you more than their monthly amount that you signed for in their guarantee contract. So if you're shopping long-term care, those are things you want to look for. Is there any kind of inflation protection? How much monthly am I able to get out? And will I even be able to realize the full policy amount? It's important not to just go for the biggest policy, like coverage-wise. You want to see what the monthly payments are. Having $100,000 coverage that pays out $8,000 per month might actually be more beneficial than a $300,000 one paying $2,000 out per month. So those are things to think about when you're doing your long-term care insurance shopping. The bottom line for this section here is insurance helps, but it does not finish the job. And plan tip number 5 is understanding that timing matters more than your account balance. You might have $1 million saved up. That's great, but if you touch it at the wrong time or do something at the wrong moment, it can completely mess you up, right? So pulling money out of your Plan 3 account too early. Plan 3 does not have Rule 55. So if I pull money out at 56, I'm still paying taxes and a penalty on that money. So you need to understand the ramifications of when I can take it. The timing matters. This matters even more so when you're dealing with deferred compensation plans. Deferred comp doesn't have any 10% penalty. You have access to the money at any age upon separation of service. I've seen a lot of people retire from their deferred comp plan, not need income from it, so they immediately move it over to their own IRA account. Now, when you did that, you went from a plan that allowed distributions any age with no 10% penalty on it to an account that's restricted to 59.5. So that money essentially gets locked up. If you're 100% confident you don't need money from it before then, that could be an okay move, but it's something you probably want to triple check on, because if there is an event or a chance you may need this money sometime before 59.5 and not having access to it, at least penalty free before then, could put a real hinkering on your retirement plan. And so it's not something you want to overlook. Retirement income planning is really about when money is accessed, how it's accessed, and what tax bracket is going to come from. One wrong move can lock you into years of potentially bad outcomes. You can have plenty of money and still get the timing wrong. So the timing is the number one thing you need to start looking at when you're doing retirement planning more than your account balance. Don't just go over there and check the balance. You want to check your timeline when you're going to make moves, understand the tax and penalties that may go along with those factors. All right, so those are the 5 tips I have for you guys for 2026. All this comes off of in-person meetings, questions, and topics that we've seen constantly throughout the last year. And so hopefully this will give you a better guidance, understanding of these little mistakes or trip-ups that we see people making, so you can hopefully make this adjustment in your own situation. All right, so now we're going to move on to the question of our day. Also remember that if you want access to our free retirement course, the link to join that is in the description below. The question we're going to talk about today comes directly from our Washington planning community. So the question is, how can I retire as early as possible from PERS 3 with over 30 years in the system? So having 30 years of service is a really big thing, especially if you're hired early enough to still qualify for 2008 ERF. It essentially gives you full retirement pension, no penalties at age 62 with 30 years of service in the system. So as long as you qualify for that, early retirement gets much easier. So if you're trying to retire as early as possible, the earliest you can take money from Plan 3 with 30 years in the system is age 55. It is a 28% penalty on your pension that is for life. However, you're now getting that money a full 7 years earlier than you otherwise would have. Plus, you're going to rack up 6 years of cost of living adjustments along the way. So the way I've done the math on it is taking it that far in advance, while it seems like a steep price to pay, the amount of money you're going to accumulate plus cost of living adjustments, it's going to essentially put a big chunk of change in your pocket over those 7 years. And the time it would take for you to get that money back or make more than that had you have waited at age 62, it's crazy. It's like your 80s, 90s, even age 100, depending on how the cost of living adjustments work out for your break-even age. So when I say break-even, it's saying if we want the most money possible in our pocket from Washington State, the person that started cutting at 55 already is going to have a large lump sum already accumulated before they got to age 62. So the person that waits till 62 has fewer years of pulling that money out. It might be higher, but you have fewer years overall. And if you have two people comparing them, one person that waited to age 62, the person that waited to only to 55, they both start pulling out. They would both have pulled the same amount of money out at age, 90 something or age 100. That's what we call about break-even age. Now this depending if you're plan 2, plan 3, and really the big factor here is cost of living adjustments. The more cost of living adjustments are, the further the breakout even is, and it can be well over age 100. So if you're on the fence about, should I take it at 55? If the number's really going to work out? If the goal is to pull as much money possible, it's going to be probably in your favor. Now, it is still a reduction and you still have bills to pay. And at the end of the day, if the reduction reduces it so much to the point where you can't afford to cover your mortgage, your car, your insurance, your healthcare, and all the things you spend money on, then it's probably not the best play. So while I love helping people retire early, I do spend a fair amount of time also telling people that they cannot retire early, that they need to start saving more or reducing their spending because they're spending too much. You can't expect to earn $200,000, go down to making $100,000 and still keep the same spending plan oftentimes. And some people have a hard time swallowing that pill, and we have to tell them you can't retire as early as they otherwise wanted to. You have to give up something at that point. All right, so that's the next part, is understanding what your budget is, how much you really need to coming in. And remember, there's two numbers. There's the need and the want. The need is, bottom line, what has to come out to cover all our mandatory expenses. So this is like your healthcare bill. What does it cost to live? You're looking at your rent, mortgage, utilities, grocery bill, gas, car pays, everything that's like essentially mandatory, none of the fun stuff yet. That's like your bare minimum. And then you do the want side. And that's when you have fun. That's when you put your vacation money in, spoiling the grandkids, things like that. You should always have some type of buffer in it, but it's important to run two different numbers from there. There's some people that when they're doing their planning have one budget number. They're saying we're currently spending $9,000 per month. We don't want to change anything. So we're going to keep working until we can safely generate $9,000 per month. That's one way to do it, but that's a high number, and you might have end up working a few years longer than you otherwise could have. If you were to trim that up a bit, and it could survive on $8,000 per month or $7,000. So the more money you want to live off of, the higher your income needs to be. Theoretically, a lot of times you have to work longer. Now, Washington State employees, you can kind of get away with sometimes because you do have pensions that are tied to your top 5 consecutive years income. So if you do land a really good high paying job at some point in your career, that's automatically going to impact your retirement income. And you may not need to save as much or work longer to accumulate more retirement income. Look at how early you're able to retire based on what the penalties are, and look at your budget, see what can be trimmed or not. And that'll give you a good idea of when retirement or when early retirement is possible. I would also run backup scenarios because life's going to happen. So when I take on clients, we run a normal scenario, assuming everything stays the same. And then we will play with inflation numbers. I would try to break them through long-term care expenses. We'll break it through early death. And we try to break the plan through just having ongoing expenses be a lot higher. So what I'm saying here is if a client comes in and says, hey, we're going to spend $8,000 per month. We run one scenario, $8,000 per month. Now we're another one spending more. We'll say $9,000, $10,000 per month. If we can still go at $9,000 per month, that's a pretty healthy plan. If we can't, that means we don't have a lot of buffer room here for any expenses or large expenses that could come on an occurring basis. And then should someone pass away, we look at life insurance involved in here. How does that affect pension? How does that affect Social Security? Things like that. So we try to figure out what can go wrong to see if we truly can retire early. Because you can probably retire early running a quick and easy spreadsheet on Excel. But if there is that one-off scenario that happens, it can completely derail you if you're not prepared for it or didn't think to plan for it. So that's where we come into play, is to look at all the different avenues to see what could potentially go wrong and what our willingness to adapt the plan is to that situation. So I would start with that. Just get a budget in place, play with your numbers, and try to see when pension and your portfolio income, Social Security and stuff is all going to line up to generate the income required. And that's how to go about it. All right, so that's it for this video. Remember, if you're not part of the Washington State Planning community, the link to join is in the show notes or the description below. It's free to join. There's free classes on there. We've got over 100 active members inside the community now to post questions and polls and things like that. So if you want to get involved in your planning at a deeper level with your peers and experts that have been in your position before, I'd recommend joining that community. And until next time, remember that your future depends on what you do today. All right, before I sign off, just a real quick legal disclosure that we're required to say as licensed fiduciary advisors. So remember that this is a podcast. It is designed for educational and entertainment purposes only. I don't know you personally, therefore I cannot give you any personal advice. So please don't take anything that we say on the show as being personal, financial, legal, or tax advice. If you want that kind of stuff, make sure you seek out a professional so they can help you with the strategies and investments that are right for you. Also, please remember that despite the name of our show, we are in no way associated with Washington State or the Department of Guidance Systems or any other Washington employer. We're a private-owned firm that specializes in working with Washington State employees, which is why we know so much about this stuff. So remember, we don't work for the state in any way, shape, or form, so please don't confuse us as being an official representative of the state. All right, that's it for the legal stuff. I'll catch you guys all next time.